The snowstorm that we experienced at the first part of the week was a good reminder that hay feeding season is right here upon us for those cow-calf operations that are going to have to feed some supplemental forage during the course of this winter. One of the key questions that always arises is, how much hay do I need to feed to a cow during the course of the winter, and therefore make the calculation as to how much hay I need to have on hand for the entire herd. Well, let's go through the procedure to calculate what a cow might need. Let's assume first of all that we're working with spring calving cows and they weigh an average of about 1,200 pounds while they're pregnant, and they're going to calve sometime in February and March. A 1,200 pound cow at this time of year can consume about 2% of her body weight in grass hay. Now that will vary according to the quality of the hay. If it's really poor grass hay, very low quality, then that percentage goes down to 1.5. If it's real high quality hay, or even something like alfalfa, then it can go up to as high as 2.5% of her body weight. But more typical, that 2% figure is a good one to start with, and that assumes that the hay quality is something around 8% crude protein. Okay, if we're getting 2% of her 1,200 pound body that she can consume every day, that's 24 pounds. But let's remember that that means that that hay is 100% dry matter. That's using a calculation that has no moisture involved. Well, it's just not the case on the real world situation, as we would call it on an as-fed basis. Most grass hays will run someplace around 10 to as low as 7% moisture. So for this example, let's use 8%, that it's 92% dry matter. That means then that instead of taking out 24 pounds of that grass hay in order to meet her needs, now on an as-fed basis, we require 26 pounds per head per day. But that still isn't the end of the story, because unfortunately cows don't eat every ounce of hay that we take out to them in the hay feeding pasture. There will be some wastage. And again, it'll be quite variable depending upon the quality of the hay and the kind of feeder that we are using to put the big round bales in. Hay wastage may vary as much as from a low of about 6% to as high as 20%. If we use in this example something kind of in the middle there, around 15%, which I think is fairly typical, then that means that instead of taking out the 26 pounds that we talked about earlier, in order to again meet the needs of the cow, including the hay wastage, we're going to take from the hay feeding area, the hay storage area, 30 pounds per cow per day that we're feeding the hay to these cows through the course of the winter. The other thing that changes, of course, is when that cow calves and she becomes a lactating cow, and now her requirements go up even more, and we go through all of those same calculations. We can simplify it and say it's going to take about 36 pounds of that same grass hay to take care of that lactating cow after she calves in February and March before spring grass starts to grow. So what does this mean in terms of the entire winter and the hay needs that we need to plan on? Generally, I would say we would expect someplace around 90 to 100 days of hay feeding. It's going to vary according to the weather, the other kinds of forages and feeds that we have available, but that might be a good starting place for our calculation. To boil that down, then, that basically means that for that cow that's going into the winter pregnant, that we're going to need someplace between 1.25 and 1.5 tons of that grass hay stored and available and ready to go for her this winter. If we have a mild winter or we have other sources of feed available, we may use much less than that. Unfortunately, if we have one of those real heavy winters with lots of snow cover, it may require even a little bit more. But that's a place to start to get an idea of how much hay we need to have stored for those cows this winter and how much we need to take out each day when there's snow cover on the ground and that's the only forage they have available. Hope this helps you as you plan your winter feeding needs this year. And we look forward to visiting with you again next week on Sunup's Cow Calf Corner.